Everyone, welcome and welcome to our Pre-Med Uncovering the Truth webinar. I am Jennie Wiliams. I'm a faculty member in the Renaissance School of Medicine, specifically in the Department of Family, Population, and Preventive Medicine. I conduct research in the area of cancer chemotherapy. I'm defining tumor biology in the context of health disparity and chemo response. I'm Assistant Dean for Student Diversity and Aligned Predoctoral Programs. This is in the Renaissance School of Medicine. I'm involved in recruiting for the Renaissance School of Medicine and in running pathway programs to medicine. I'm also Associate Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Stony Brook University's Cancer Center. Here I promote inclusion in the workforce, research, and in medicine. I'm going to now pass the baton over to Ms. Grace Agnetti.
Hello, everyone. I'm Grace Agnetti. I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions for the Renaissance School of Medicine, and I've been doing medical school admissions for close to 40 years. I've been at Stony Brook now for just a little over 30, and prior to that, I was the Assistant Dean of Admissions at Cornell Medical School, now known as Weill Cornell, in the mid-'80s. I actually graduated from Stony Brook University and was at the university when the hospital opened in 1980. So I've had some long nights and days walking through campus and being very involved. I was on the athletic board here for 12 years. So Stony Brook is my home, and I'm very, very proud of the most recent U.S. News and World Report that has come out. So, yay, Stony Brook.
We're going to now have one of our medical students, MD student, Lauren, talk about herself.
Hi, my name is Lauren. I'm a second-year medical student here at Stony Brook. I also actually went to Stony Brook for undergrad, so go Seawolves. I'm originally from Westchester, New York, but I've been in Stony Brook since, I guess, 2017. Some things I like to do here at Stony Brook are the USET program, which is like the undergraduate clinical experience program. I actually just got chosen to be on the panel for admissions to help interview students. I'm one of the anatomy TAs as well. So that's just some of the extracurriculars I've been doing. But right now, a lot of the focus is just on studying because, yeah, there's a lot to learn.
All right, we have an MD PhD student, Natalie.
Hi, my name is Natalie. I'm also a second-year medical student. Just like Lauren, I went to Stony Brook for undergrad. I majored in biology and sociology, and my research interests are in DNA repair and cancer. And I'm originally from Long Island, New York, and some things I'm involved in around Stony Brook is SB Home, which is our free clinic. I'm part of the phlebotomy team, and I'm also very interested in DEI and just helping out in recruiting more high school students to be interested in the medical field.
All right, we have now another student who's an undergrad student. She's in one of our pathway programs in medicine, Simran.
Hello, everyone. My name is Simran Multani. I'm currently a senior and a chemistry major. And right now I'm doing research in infectious diseases, specifically studying bacterial biofilms and nitric oxide mediated pathways. I am involved in like several different clubs, but I think the major ones are the American Medical Women's Association. I'm also involved in the Stony Brook English Pals, and I also served on the Dean Student Advisory Council for all my time here.
Okay, nice. We were given a few questions from you, from you guys who are online right now, and we're going to start with those questions. And as we go along, you put questions in the chat box, and we'll answer those as well. So the first question was, will Stony Brook offer me a good pre-med education on its own? I can answer that question as a faculty member, but I think you really want that to be answered by a student. So I teach at Stony Brook undergrads as well as some of the medical students. I do a few lectures here and there, but for the most part, the student are the ones who are going to get the perspective of what great educational system we have. So one of the students can just chime in right now.
I'll chime in since I'm like still an undergrad. I think definitely the courses that are offered are extremely rigorous and they're not easy. They're definitely difficult and you have to work hard in each and every one of them. But I do 100% think that after completing those courses, you definitely have the tools that you will need to succeed as a medical student in the future. So I would definitely say that we do have actually a tremendous pre-med education here at Stony Brook.
A medical student?
Going off of what she said before, I found that when I was preparing to take the MCAT to apply for medical school, a lot of my classes had done a pretty good job of preparing me for giving me a great foundation so that when I started taking practice tests, I was able to remember a lot of the things from the classes that were taught to me by the professors. And it is, like Simran said, very, very rigorous. So you do need to put in a lot of time and effort, but that pays off a lot when you start studying for your MCAT and during your application for preparing for medical school.
Okay, so the next question that we have is, what is the best major for preparing for the MCAT? I can start this off and anybody could chime in and jump in as they want to. In my opinion, there is no best major for preparing for the MCAT. There are certain required courses that you need to complete, and they are usually like in the sciences, the biology, the chemistry, organic chemistry. Stony Brook actually has for the Renaissance School of Medicine what they call highly recommended courses, which is biology, chemistry, English writing, physics, social science, humanities, and statistics.
Biochemistry too. Biochemistry.
Okay.
Highly recommend biochemistry.
Take bio as an yes, do that.
Yes, but a major, you don't really have to have a specific major, just as long as you are prepped for taking the MCATs. I've had students who've come in for interviews that were music majors, that were dance majors. There have been all kinds of majors all over the place. So it doesn't matter what major you are. Anybody want to expand on that?
Can I say something? So
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
true what Dr. Wiliams is saying. It's usually more science versus non-science majors, but we always have many students who are non-science majors as well. What Dr. Wiliams mentioned about the courses at the Renaissance School of Medicine are highly recommended. Other medical schools still have hard requirements if you're applying to those schools. So the important thing that you have to remember is when and if you're going to be applying to medical school, this is for the MD program, you need to know, and there's a lot of information online through the Association of American Medical Colleges that has websites that there's about 170 different medical schools here in Canada, MD programs, and you need to know the schools that you want to apply to. Are they requiring courses? Are they highly recommending courses? So just because the information that we're giving you today is really specific to the Renaissance School of Medicine. So I just want to make that clear.
Okay, great. If we don't expound enough on something, throw it in the chat, and we'll discuss it. So just let us know.
Mm-hmm.
I see there's a couple one in the chat right now that says, do students study for the MCAT on their own? Yes and no. The medical students can actually tell you what they did, but I know that some of my students take prep courses, and some of the pathway programs that I run, we actually pay for the prep courses for the students. So medical students, can you tell me what you guys did?
Sure, I could start. So to prep, it also kind of happened to be like around COVID time. So I just kind of wanted to give myself like a summer to study. And I took it the summer after my junior year. So at that point, I finished all my pre-med requisites, which I do recommend because seeing the material as a second pass versus learning it for the first time for the MCAT like it definitely could be intimidating. I also did take a prep course. Actually, a lot of Stony Brook undergrad students, like people use Kaplan and other sources like that. There's this guy, Dan Block, that has a course. And he has a summer session or like a full year session. So you can do either. That helps me really like with the time management side of it. A lot of people also use like Reddit for recommendations, like to kind of make like a study schedule for themselves. A lot of the prep is a lot less content prep that you would expect, and like a lot more like reading comprehension and timing and like understanding what to take out of the passages. So yeah, like I said, I think it's very like useful to kind of have most of your science classes done when you're prepping for it, and also like give yourself the time to prepare. Like I'm sure we'll get into like a bit more of this later, but like I ended up taking a gap year, like not because of the MCAT, just because like I wanted time to like digest everything and like get my application together like the way I wanted it to be. So like if you're stressed about studying for it, or like your schoolwork's like too intense at the time, you can always like delay it a bit, or like do it at a time that's right for you. Like you don't need to put yourself on any like specific time course, and you can always retake it too if you need.
Lauren, someone has a question for you. Have you had any clinical experience as a second year? When in med school, are you able to be involved in patient care?
Yeah, so the way Stony Brook has their program is that it's a year and a half preclinical, and then you go into clinicals afterwards. So we'll start clinicals in January. It definitely is like kind of more focused on like the books at this stage, but we do have something called ICM, which is a course focused on like patient interaction, and you work with standardized patients. And you also work with like your peers in that class and with fourth year students to kind of get better at knowing how to like take a history and perform a physical, and like before you do it on actual patients. And then like I guess around halfway through your first year, you are paired with a preceptor who is a doctor who's either like a resident or an attending at the hospital, and you do kind of like rounds with them and get to practice your physical exam skills and your history taking with real patients, which is really, really beneficial. And it's like kind of nice to put into perspective, like kind of why like you're studying medicine. And you also like during first year, while you're still doing preclinical stuff, you can always like ask doctors to shadow and or get involved in SBU Home, which is the clinic. There's a lot of volunteer opportunities where you'll get to interact with patients too.
Okay, maybe Simran, you can answer this one. What does a pre-med student schedule look like on a day-to-day basis at Stony Brook? And remember what I said earlier about there not being a specific major for pre-meds, so you can have students from all across campus doing different things. But Simran, would you please just tell them what you do?
Yeah, so like as Dr. Wiliams mentioned, this would be entirely unique to you and what particular medical school you have intent on going to in the future. Because everybody's schedule is going to look different depending on your major, depending on what extracurricular activities you're involved in. And for me, specifically, I'm a chemistry major, so a lot of the typical pre-med prerequisites for like almost universal medical schools would have been covered under my major requirements, because I had the option of choosing a biological chemistry concentration. So a lot of my classes like organic chemistry, biochemistry, writing, physics, like all of those classes I had to take anyways for my major. So I didn't have to take a lot of external classes in addition to my major classes. I am somebody who is involved in a lot of different clubs and organizations. I'm actually also a resident assistant and a teaching assistant for several classes. I also work for the Academic Success and Tutoring Center. So my daily schedule was pretty packed, honestly. But I think what was really important for me was scheduling breaks and scheduling time to spend with my friends and scheduling time to just do things that I really enjoyed. So I always ensured that there was at least like one activity in throughout my day that I really, really enjoyed and really looked forward to going to each day, because that made the entire process a lot easier for me to not only handle, but was also kind of motivating for me as well. So I can give you like a general example. Probably like last year, I was taking Bio 203, which is the like second general biology class, and I was also taking organic chemistry 2, and I took one of the like SBCs, which are the curriculum requirements for Stony Brook, and I also took like a few chemistry labs. So I took spectroscopy lab, and I also took um the first PChem lab. So those were like the classes that I took, but I was also involved in different like clubs and organizations. I was involved in the American Medical Women's Association, and we typically had GBMs like once a week, and this was in the evening. I was on the e-board of this club, so I was able to offer my input in terms of the hours and scheduling of the club events. So obviously I was biased, and I, made it in such a way that it accommodated my schedule. In addition to like several other clubs that I was involved in, but I always made sure that I was never overbooked to the point that I felt like overwhelmed or I just didn't have time for myself. So although you may be ambitious and you want to be involved in everything and join every club, I think it's just generally important to take breaks, schedule breaks, and do things that you enjoy.
Okay, so they have a question for the students. Does Stony Brook help you find internships or clinical opportunities during your undergrad experience? If so, what have you done so far? And I think that's more Simran, and I'm sorry you have to go again.
Yeah, definitely. So there is a career center at Stony Brook, which is extremely helpful. I cannot stress this enough. They have helped me so much. I have bothered them so much. But they definitely help you, and they're always willing to help you fix your resume, find internships, find jobs, so many different things. I know they even have drop-in hours specifically for healthcare related fields. I remember I would just go to, I think, Heather O'Connor. I would go to her drop-in hours, and it's basically just a time where it's free. You could just walk in, no appointment needed. And I would just go and, ask her like, what things are going on right now around campus or close by in Long Island. And she would sometimes help me, like send me an email with like a bunch of different opportunities that were specific to me. And that was really, really helpful for me. In addition, there is this thing called Handshake at Stony Brook, which also has a listing of like a bunch of different internships and jobs and opportunities and things of that nature. In terms of specific internships and clinical opportunities that I did here at Stony Brook, I was involved in USEP as well, like Lauren, and like SB Home as like Natalie. And I also did the PACE program, which allowed me to shadow different physicians. I got exposure to like the skills lab and things of that nature. I also work as a medical scribe in the Stony Brook ER, and I do that currently. This is something that I applied to on my own, but I actually got a recommendation from somebody who was on my e-board in the American Medical Women's Association. So that made finding that job a lot more seamless for me. Because once I had their recommendation, it was like it kind of put my name at the top of the list. So definitely networking with people, even I wouldn't say just network up, but also network across. So network with your fellow peers, network with other students in your class, because like you never know what opportunities lie ahead. I also did like several other internships that were not specifically clinical, but I did a few research internships. So over the summer specifically, I did the Francis Vallée Fellowship. I also did the SUNY SOAR Fellowship for research as well, there's a lot of opportunities for paid research over the summer. And that's like a great opportunity for students to not only get paid, but to also dive deep into your research, because although you may be involved in research during the semester, you obviously have classes and other time commitments that wouldn't allow you to be in lab as much as you would like, especially if it's a wet lab. So over the summer, I was able to work 40 hours a week. And so I was really able to go into lab every day and like hone all of those skills that I have now, which was like extremely helpful for me. So those were some of the internships I did. I also did some social justice internships, but I won't bore y'all with that since it's not clinically relevant.
I can add like a few more like things about Stony Brook, like on top of that is just like, it is very convenient to have the hospital across the street from the undergrad campus. So I know you said you also did like scribing in the ED, which is awesome. There's another like volunteer program called the HELP program, which is Hospital Elder Life Program. And you kind of just like play games and interact with the patients on the geriatric units. And that was like one of the easiest ways to get involved freshman year. Like it was very low commitment and like it was like just very easy, and I definitely recommend that. And like you said too, like with wet lab research, I was able to just like, I think I emailed 3 different PIs, like just like based on a list I found online, and then like one of them responded and I was in their lab for 1.5 years. So it's like, and I could just walk across the street and be there and then go to class later on in the day. So yeah, it's really convenient to have both right next to each other. And Ursula from the Career Center is also great. She like got me my job as a medical assistant and I was there for over 2 years. So it's like very nice to, oh, one more thing too is the pre-medical frat. I was able to join like my sophomore year in undergrad, and that really helped like provide guidance and helped me figure out things. And it's very convenient that Stony Brook is filled with so many pre-medical students because they're all kind of willing to help each other out, whether it's like their TAs in your courses or whether it's something like the pre-med frat or something along those lines. There's a lot of resources. It's more just like kind of figuring out who to contact and how to get involved.
Also, the pathway programs that I mentioned earlier, we organize research internships as well as shadowing.
There's also a volunteer ambulance on Stony Brook. You can apply as a freshman or any year, and then you can actually they subsidize you to take an EMT class. You can get your EMT license and you can ride with the ambulances and you can help out and actually have a more direct patient contact. And also not at Stony Brook, but in the neighboring town, Port Jefferson, there's also an EMS agency that you can join. So those are 2 clinical opportunities that you can also get involved in.
Can I just chime in with just 2 quick remarks from the other angle, from the admissions committee and how, we look at applicants. So, I marvel over how involved our students, undergrads and medical students are, but I would highly recommend to those people starting college, and, you really don't want to overextend yourself with a plethora of activities and you can't keep track of where you're going, and not lose sight that you really want to do well academically, right? You really want to focus in on that. And the admissions committee for the medical school has taken for, the last, as far as I know, decades, a very holistic approach to how we look at someone's application. It's not just based on your grades and your MCAT scores, but it's based on so many different variables. But that's really important to remember. And the other thing is, when you get to college, or if you're currently in college, you probably could agree that you have to be resourceful. You have to go out there and find these opportunities. No one's going to walk up to you and say, "Oh, good morning. Would you like to do research in my lab?" Right? So you have to be resourceful. No one's going to hold your hand and tell you. And like Simran was saying, networking is critical. It's absolutely essential. And you get to meet people. So remember that when you're going to college, that you have to be resourceful and aggressive. And maybe you'll email someone and they don't get back to you right away. Okay, they're busy. Give them a couple of days, a week, email them again. You know, I couldn't do research because that person never responded to me. So that was over. You know, that is not the attitude to have, right? You have to be aggressive in a professional way, but not lose sight that, you know, people are also busy and they might take a few days to get back to you. Would you agree with me, Lauren and Natalie, as medical students? Okay.
Yeah, especially what you said about freshman year, like getting adjusted to classes is gonna take time. So like take time and like make sure like you're okay and like handle things, because you'll like realize too, like you'll end up like towards the end of your college career like having so much on your plate. But like just knowing how to time manage better and like be able to like handle it and not like be overly stressed. And you'll see that like with applications too. Like I didn't realize applying that like how much more I did like as my college career went on, and how much better I felt, and like how my grades were better like towards the end, just because like you'll get adjusted. But it definitely is adjustment, especially at a very big school. You do need to like definitely learn how to be independent and like and do things for yourself.
It's not only a big school, it's called life.
Yes, and it's a good preparation for medical school.
Yes, and medical school. Yes.
Yes, all school and all life.
Okay, so there are some questions about Scholars for Medicine program, and I know Ms. Agnetti actually runs set up the interviews and
Right.
you go through the applications. So could you just explain in general what the program is?
Sure. So the Scholars for Medicine program is truly, it's considered an undergraduate initiative because you first have to apply and be accepted to Stony Brook University. And it's obviously going to be a competitive program. You apply if you're interested in the Scholars for Medicine program, and I would strongly suggest that you go on our website, the university website, and if you have any specific questions about the application process, you really need to speak to undergraduate admissions. The medical school doesn't handle the application process. So the way it works is you could choose an honors program, either the Honors College, University Scholars, or WISE, which is Women in Science and Engineering. So those are the three tracks. So basically, thousands of applicants apply within these three tracks, many of whom earmark themselves as interested in Scholars for Medicine. We, the Renaissance School of Medicine, will only get the top 40 applications that the undergraduate admissions department will forward to us. So, you know, getting to that point, it's always a competitive process, but yet the truly holistic process is the same for the Scholars program. It's a combined BA or BS MD program. It's not an abbreviated program. You do 4 years of undergraduate and then 4 years of medical school. Some of the students who are accepted into the Scholars for Medicine program, and it varies from year to year, I would say on average, we matriculate about 6 or 7 students each year in each one of our entering classes from the Scholars for Medicine program. But there are some students who will finish their undergraduate work in 3 years because they come in with a lot of AP, they've worked really hard, they want to take this year before they start medical school to maybe travel or do research. And, you know, there's advisors that will talk to you about all this through the Scholars for Medicine program, but it is a competitive program. If you are accepted, you have to be interviewed by 2 members of our Renaissance School of Medicine admissions committee members. If you are accepted to the program, you have a provisional acceptance to the medical school. Your letter will state all of this. You have to maintain a certain GPA, have scored a certain in a certain range on the MCAT. You have to have integrity and professionalism, your grades. We have recommendations. So once all of that is fulfilled, then we vet your application to our committee for acceptance. So it's a process, but if this is something that you truly want, I would strongly suggest that you, number one, contact the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. I know they give tours of the university because you first have to apply as a senior in high school to Stony Brook University and then be accepted first at the university. And then it becomes like a different process, but you have to earmark yourself in one of those programs that you want to be considered for. I hope that makes sense. I see Amanda's putting up campus tours. I would strongly recommend that if you are thinking about Stony Brook University and or the Scholars for Medicine program, you come and visit and meet with the students. Absolutely.
Yes, I agree. There's a question, let me see here. There's a question about Stony Brook pre-meds feeding into other med schools. The concept of a pre-med at Stony Brook is such that these are students who are getting a 4-year college degree, and they don't feed into Stony Brook per se. They can apply to Stony Brook and get accepted if they meet the criteria, but they can also apply to any other school and meet their criteria and get in. So it's not that we feed into our pre-med programs or our pre-med students feed into our programs. It's more so that they get their degree and then they apply. Anybody want to expand on that?
Well, can I just say something before the students have the right? So first of all, again, this is for the MD program, right? This is not DO schools. We are told, and the AAMC is the Association of American Medical Colleges. This data is all online for public information. On average, applicants apply to about 15 medical schools. That's average. So there are people that obviously apply to many more and less, but we at the Renaissance School of Medicine historically have always recruited and matriculated. The highest number of our undergraduates are from Stony Brook. So just to give you an example, for our 2023 entering class, which just began on August 7th, you start medical school real early. We had 66 different universities and colleges represented, 20 of whom were from Stony Brook University. The second highest was Cornell at 17, but we have people from all different colleges and universities throughout the United States. We do have some international students. We have the SUNYs, the CUNYs, the Ivies, the small privates, the UC schools in California. It runs the gamut. But Stony Brook historically, not only for Stony Brook University Medical School, but also for sort of the Northeast, where one of the undergraduate part is one of the larger feeder schools for a lot of the medical schools in the tri-state area.
Any of the students have any comments?
Going
Nope.
off of that, I guess my friend group, out of all of my friends who were pre-med, I was the only one who ended up going to Stony Brook, and a few of them went to Albert Einstein, SUNY Downstate, and the NYIT program. So you can go to apply for any medical school. I applied for 22 medical schools across all of the Northeast. So you can apply to any medical school you want, and you don't have to necessarily feed back into Stony Brook.
Right.
But it is a great medical school, so I highly recommend it.
Simran, would you mind expanding on what kind of work you did in the lab?
Yes, sure. So I worked in a lab in the chemistry department. But more specifically, my project was centered around several different topics. So I'd say microbiology, immunology, biological chemistry are sort of the major, like, broad topics. But specifically in my lab, my PI, or my principal investigator, actually discovered a novel nitric oxide sensing protein known as NOSP that is known to disperse biofilms when associated with another kinase. And essentially a biofilm is just bacteria that aggregate together and form like this macrostructure of bacteria. And essentially when bacteria are in this biofilm state, they are less resistant to antibiotics. And so it's more difficult for us to treat them clinically. In addition, they have been bacteria who are able to form biofilms, specifically one type of bacteria known as Pseudomonas aeruginosa has been implicated in several diseases, and the most common one is cystic fibrosis. So our lab is basically trying to understand how nitric oxide sensing protein, which was discovered in my lab, how that affects biofilm dispersal and generally the biofilm life cycle. So me specifically, I focused on 2 stages of the biofilm life cycle, which were attachment, which is the very initial stage, because essentially the bacteria attach to a surface and then they mature and form the mature biofilm. So I focus on that initial stage and the final stage, which is the dispersal stage, which is when the bacteria go from the biofilm state to a free-flowing motile state. And I essentially quantified the bacterial growth using a series of biochemical assays, which I won't bore you with like all the details of. But essentially, I was able to produce a body of work this year in my senior thesis. And basically, my entire project was studying the biofilm life cycle and understanding how that particular protein and its kinase affects biofilm formation and generally regulation of biofilms. And obviously, we had to perform site-directed mutagenesis and all these other things to test that. But essentially, every day in the lab when I went, I was growing bacteria, I was culturing bacteria, I was making plates, I was performing PCRs, qPCRs, I was doing like spectroscopy, I had to use the microscope. So that's like more of like what I did on a day-to-day basis. And there was also a lot of writing involved. My PI mandated that I went to certain conferences and certain research talks and things of that nature. So I was very involved in the more so research aspect of it. In addition to, we had to go to group meetings every week on Wednesdays for like 2 hours in the morning to learn about like recent developments in the research world, so new publications, and I had to read publications and summarize them in my own words and things of that nature. So that's like kind of what I did. I don't know if I answered your question fully.
I think you did. Okay, so there was a question about rates of acceptance. And I have numbers here that Ms. Agnetti gave me. So for 2023, the total application pool was 5,470. The total applicants interviews was 849. The total acceptance offered was 468. And the total number of matriculants, the number of individuals that came to Stony Brook, was 136. So I hope that answers your question.
Can I add something to that?
Yes,
so
ma'am.
as Dr. Wiliams mentioned, the numbers that she just gave you were the numbers for our medical school. It's important to know, like on a larger scale, like how do you, like we're one of, many medical schools, but I believe last year it was about 52,000 people applied to US MD programs, of which about 22,000 matriculated. So you don't have to be a mathematician to figure out that about 30,000 of those folks did not get in to an MD program that they applied to. So the landscape it's really wide. So what I could suggest just quickly as I'm on this trajectory right now is it's very important that you get good pre-medical advising, whether it's from pre-health offices or mentors, faculty, and you apply to medical school when you feel you have your best application. You take the MCAT not haphazardly because all your friends are taking it. You take it when you feel that you are ready, because the goal is to take it once. You don't go in with the attitude, well, let me see what kind of a test this is. I'm going to go try it. No, that's not the approach. So, there's thousands of people, and I tell the people that apply to our school each year, you have to remember that you are one of thousands. We had almost 5,500 people applying last year for 136 seats. It's very competitive. So keep that in mind. It's very important to make sure that you are prepared when you are applying to medical school. It's an expensive endeavor that the students will tell you. It's a long and arduous process. You technically start the application process maybe 14 months before you matriculate. So this is not something that you decide at the last minute. That's just a little bit of advice from someone from the other side.
Okay, so someone wanted to know what careers stem out of pre-med. And as I stated before earlier, pre-med is an educational track and not a major, so the students can major in anything. And therefore the pathway up to any career is wide. So you can go medicine, of course, because that's your early thoughts in as to what you want to do. And within medicine, you can get an MD degree, MD PhD degree, an MD MPH degree, which is a master's in public health, and an MD MBA, which is a master's in business administration. So outside of the medicine, you can do allied health professions. You can go into academia as an administrator, faculty, or researcher. You can go to industry. There's so many other things that you can do as well. I mean, you can become a hairdresser. It's like you don't even have to stay in the field. You can do whatever you want to do.
I think that happened in our class. Someone started cutting everyone's hair, but I guess they had a side gig.
Awesome. Okay, so someone want to know about the PA program. Anybody here know about the PA program? Physician's assistants.
What specifically about the PA?
They want to know. Well, I actually know the answer, but is there a direct admit into the PA program at Stony Brook?
I don't think there is.
I think it's important. Honestly, I think it's important if who's ever interested in any of the allied health programs to contact the School of Health Technology and Management. I don't know if they've kind of changed their names a few times, but
yes,
that's a whole different track from the MD program, as is nursing, as is social welfare, and as is dental medicine. They're
right.
Completely different tracks. So if you want information on any of those other programs, start on the websites, and then you can make some contacts. There's phone numbers, there's people you can contact.
Right. And from the website, I found out that the School of Medicine, the School of Nursing has a School of Nursing Scholars Program, which is a direct admitting to the nursing program, and scholars for dental medicine also exist, but not for PA. But like Ms. Agnetti said, go online and determine what it is. Okay, so this is a question that was asked. Is Stony Brook University affiliated with any hospitals?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You want me to say that?
Yes, ma'am.
So currently, the Stony Brook University Hospital is also Stony Brook Children's Hospital, as well as Stony Brook Southampton Hospital, which is on the east end of Long Island, as is the Stony Brook Eastern Long Island Hospital in Greenport, which is the North Fork of the island. And what we didn't mention earlier was on our campus is also the Long Island State Veterans Home. So there's a lot of opportunities right on our campus, but those are the other two hospitals offsite are Southampton and Eastern Long Island and Greenport. So those are all the hospitals that we are affiliated with.
For the students, someone wants to know, how do you manage paying for both undergrad and medical school?
I think the loans for grad school are different than they are for undergrad. For at least for the med school, I'm kind of like disconnected from the undergraduate side of thing a little bit. But you pretty much just like apply on FAFSA for all the federal aid, and you get tuition covered as well as like living expenses. So you'll get like all the money goes towards tuition, and then there's also like directly into like your bank account, you'll have money to like provide for yourself for like food, housing, all that kind of stuff. That depends how much like you take out. You can either like accept the full amount or like take out as much as you need. So, and then I guess we'll pay it back obviously after we graduate. I think New York State also has programs. I don't know if anything's changing, because I think like there was Supreme Court stuff about this. I don't know if it applies to grad school too, but there are like loan forgiveness programs throughout New York State if you work in healthcare, if you work in public hospitals. So I don't know too much about that yet, but like I'm definitely hoping to like look into that more when the time comes. But yeah, I think being in the SUNY system definitely helps with that. And like obviously it's still very, very expensive, but compared to private institutions, it definitely is less expensive, but still a lot.
Yeah, we actually have someone who help you with your finances once you get to medical school. She actually is very good at finding money and knowing where to tell you to go to find money. There's a couple of scholarships that are offered through the university. There's a Turner Fellowship that's offered through the Center for Inclusive Education, as well as a fellowship that is given through Associated Medical Schools in New York, which is actually paid through the state. So there are money out there. You just have to find them. And I'm always getting these little notices about telling my students to apply for this scholarship or that scholarship coming from different places. And I pass them along. And most of the time I get response back from the students saying that they got them. I mean, they're not huge grants, but they're enough to pay a rent or two.
Natalie, do you want to talk about the MSTP program?
Yeah, I could actually talk about undergrad and MSTP. I actually had scholarships. So for my undergrad, I was in the Women in Science and Engineering Honors Program, and I received the Presidential Scholarship, which paid for 4 years of my undergrad tuition. And then also for the MD PhD program, also known as MSTP, which stands for Medical Scientist Training Program. We are under a grant by the government called through NIH, where it's a training grant where your 4 years of medical school are paid for, in addition to your 4 or more years of PhD training. So that is an option if you're interested in pursuing research and also getting a medical degree. You can apply for the MD PhD program, and there's, I think, 20 to 30 MD PhD programs throughout the entire country. And there's a lot of options.
But you also get a stipend too every year.
Yes, we get currently it's for Stony Brook, it's $34,000 a year. So you get a stipend on top of your tuition being paid, and that allows you to be able to pay for room, board, and anything else that you need.
Right.
For undergrad, you can also like, it isn't like you will have a lot to manage, but it also isn't impossible to have a job. I think Simran does this now too, but like as an undergrad, I worked with the tutoring center and got paid to be a tutor, which was easy because they know you're like a student, so you can kind of make your own schedule, which was nice. And then I worked as a medical assistant as well and got like that was a paid position. So your job doesn't always need to be like a separate from medicine. Like you can definitely use it and like talk about it on your applications, and like any experience is good experience. I worked in restaurants too, like in high school and a little bit in college, and like just interacting with people is like, it feels like clinical experience in a way, minus all the like medicine part of it, but like just talking to people is important too. So definitely having a job, even if it's just like a part-time 1 or 2 days a week, is definitely feasible.
And the Committee on Admissions, when evaluating applications, you know, when people apply to medical school, and if we were to print out their application, their primary application is about 18 pages. That's just a primary application, because the holistic approach means we want to know, where are you working? How many hours a week are you working? Where are you working? You're working in a restaurant? You're working. This is all part of who you are as an individual and what you bring to the table. So everything is important. And if people have to work to support themselves, to help their families, and we see this in the application, this person may not have as many hours to do more research or more clinical, but we understand that, but we have to know that also. So it's really important, as Lauren and Simran and Nat, this is all part of the process. So it's important when you are hopefully applying, give us as much information as you can about who you are. That's very important.
Yes, and sometimes you can actually combine things together. I pay some of my undergrad as undergrad research technicians to do research. So they're getting the experience of doing research as well as getting money on top of that. And some other faculty members do the same.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, there are other things that you can do as well. Like I mentioned, I'm a resident assistant. So this actually covers my entire housing bill in addition to my meals. So although it's not directly your tuition payment, especially if you don't live close by to your university and you have to dorm, that takes off a sizable amount that you would have had to spend. So that's also something to consider.
Good point, Simran. Mhm.
It is good.
Mhm.
Okay, there's a question here. Is it difficult to manage free time and workload? Do you have any ways, tips on how to manage time efficiently?
I guess time management is very, very important. And I think it definitely changes like throughout the phases in your life. Like high school, you're forced to be in school from like whatever, I can't even remember. Wow, like 8 until 3 or whatever it is. And then I'm sure you're loaded with extracurriculars after that. In college, there's a very big difference. You're going to feel like you have so much more free time, but like with that comes also like responsibility and knowing how to manage your time. So personally, I always like writing out a schedule with like things I need to go to, mandatory events, classes, and then work around that and put in like when I like dedicated study hours or like dedicated free time, or just knowing like what the week ahead looks like so that you can adequately plan. Because at least at Stony Brook for undergrad, like you really couldn't cram for a bio exam. Like that's just not how it works. Like you need to like give yourself time and space it out. Like force repetition, like if you use like flashcards is super helpful. So like there's a lot of different study techniques. You kind of need to figure out what works for you, which is another big thing, because like you'll hear other people talking, or everyone has their own way to study. So it's really important to also like figure out what's the best learning style for you and to test different things out. And like even from undergrad to medical school, the way I studied completely changed, just like based on like free time and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's also important not to burn out. So make sure that you do give yourself at least a few hours every day to just like take time and relax, do something you love to do, hang out with your friends. I think having a social life is very important, and like you're going to need a support system throughout all your schooling, and have people that aren't directly involved in every single thing you're doing as well, because it's important to kind of remove yourself from it sometimes and like put life into perspective. So, but time management is really, really, really important.
Google Calendar helps a lot. Just put everything in and connect it to your phone. You get automatic reminders.
I live by the calendar. I have to have it.
Yeah, it's my best friend, honestly.
Okay, so Miss Natalie, and that's exactly how they said, Ms. Natalie, your path is so inspiring about MD, PhD. Did you apply to MD after being an undergrad, or did you get accepted into BS MD from high school?
So I was part of just the normal BS program at Stony Brook, and I applied in my senior year for medical school. And it was during my sophomore and junior year, I was deciding whether or not to add research to my career and choose between whether I do an MD or an MD PhD. But I had a really great mentor in the research lab that I was working at, and she really inspired me to pursue research and to kind of act as a bridge between researchers in academia and clinicians. And that's why my senior year, I decided to apply for the MD PhD program.
Nice. I actually had a student, and you know him, Natalie, Shrey Thacker.
Yeah, he's in my cohort this year.
Yeah, he was high school student in my
Scholars for
lab.
medicine. He was Scholars for Medicine.
Yeah, that became a Scholars for Medicine that actually decided in his senior year as well. I told him, I was like, you got all this experience, because he worked with me for 4 years as an undergrad as well, and 2 years as a high school student. And I said, you got all this experience in research, you might as well go for the MD PhD, and he did.
Yeah.
Okay, so someone wants to know about specialties, specifically dermatology. They ask about dermatology, and is this something that you do as an undergrad or in medicine? And I'm just going to take that and say medicine. Anybody got anything else to say?
Derm is very competitive. I'm sure you know, even a lot of people now, like after medical school, end up taking gap years so that they can match into dermatology. I would say if you don't like, one, you don't really know we don't know what we want to do yet, and we're starting rotations in January. Everyone says you'll never really know until you get on rotations and actually get that firsthand experience. Like, obviously it's not bad to have ideas and like look into things that you're interested in. I know a few of my friends that are interested in derm like end up finding jobs as dermatology medical assistants, which definitely gives you some exposure. You can also obviously as an undergrad like look into like research if that's an option, or do something like related to dermatology, but like it's not make or break, especially when you're trying to like get into medical school. And for most specialties, I would say like they're all most of them are like, if you have research, you have research. Like it doesn't necessarily need to be in the field. That I think changes for some more competitive specialties, but right now I wouldn't concern yourself with that as much and just try to get involved in just doing something.
Yeah, that's the medical school.
Advice. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so Miss Agnetti, I'm sorry, I know your name. I'm sorry.
Why don't you just say
there,
Grace? My name is Grace. You always call me Grace. It's fine.
Are there any AP classes you would recommend to take in high school that can give this individual an advantage when taking prerequisite course classes at Stony Brook?
You know, that's something that would be probably better answered through an undergraduate advisor, because once you apply to medical school, we will see your academic coursework. And honestly, so many people have AP courses, and it depends on what school you decide to go to. So that's something that you have any specific questions about that, I would direct that to an undergraduate advisor. Amanda's kind of shaking her head because, medical schools, first of all, we don't require courses. So we're not looking at your coursework specifically. We're looking at the overall, how you've done on your courses. And did you take, some time off while you were in school? Did you transfer 2 or 3 times? I mean, there's so many different variables, but as far as the AP courses, medical schools don't really get that involved in that type of academic process. That's more of an undergraduate process. Amanda, am I correct to say that?
Yes, and I think there's a eagerness to be done with all the requirements right away. And I think if I've learned anything listening to everyone, it's that you want to take your time, explore, learn, gather knowledge before you focus so much on completing all the requirements. And I think that's a very kind of high school driven model where you're in that process of like, I have to take all these classes and complete all these things because it's going to look good on my college application. APs are great. We have a lot of students who apply from high schools with no AP curriculum. So that's not going to hurt you if you don't have APs, because we look at everything on a really kind of level playing field, and we try to make the undergraduate admissions process as stress-free as possible. But I think when you get to college, you're going to find that the medical schools are, in my understanding, looking at your college level courses. So if you take high school courses and that are advanced, that's great, but they're still going to want to see that you have a certain kind of math and science, social science background in college, whatever that college is. If it's Stony Brook, great. We have excellent courses for you to take. But trying to get ahead is kind of really the wrong approach, I think. I know it feels right, but it's the wrong approach in this case. So, but you can always call the admissions office. I posted our contact information. We have an AP chart on our website. So if you want to look up all the AP courses you're taking and see how they will be accepted at Stony Brook, you can do that. You can see what courses they replace. But I think, eventually in college, you'll start to kind of leave that mindset behind, and your focus will change a little bit on the learning and acquiring knowledge. So correct me if I'm wrong.
That sounds fine to me.
Great.
Totally.
Okay, so we ran out of questions. So I think at this point we are thanking the panel for the panelists for doing this event tonight. I really appreciate your accepting my invitation to come. And I owe you big time.
Good luck, everyone. Really wish you the best of
So
luck.
much, everyone. We
a
really
good evening.
appreciate everything you've done, and you know, good luck with your medical school careers
And
your
process.
undergrad careers, your jobs.
Yes, and
Good luck to everyone. It was nice to see everyone. Have a great night.